Hey guys, I'm Joshua Vidovic from Vidovic Arts, and today is a different video. We've actually had so many people requesting how I set up my printer and my Cura settings and all that kind of stuff. So I thought I would make a little video showing you how to do it. It's really easy, so step by step, I'll show you the Cura settings and what I do to the printer to make my prints look so good. Ultimately with Cura, I don't really change the settings too much. I know there are ways to print really extremely well on extremely high settings with the fine setting and extra fine, and then you can go and make it even higher by making it your own custom setting. But I like to stick with the fine to normal setting. With my larger prints like buildings or the dice towers, I've been using the normal setting, and these are completely stock settings. You don't really have to try too hard to get it working. It'll be pretty much what it is. Now, one of the important things that I do that is completely different is use the supports, or the tree supports. Now, I know Cura has two different kinds of supports. It's got the inbuilt supports, which are they're like kind of like on a grid. They go up and down like this, and the tree supports look like this. So here is an offcut that looks like a mess, and it is a mess, but it ultimately looks like a tree. So it'll come up and it'll kind of support your structure like so, instead of it being like a zigzaggy one. Now, I've had people kind of come to me and say they prefer the original supports. It's completely up to you. I absolutely hate them. I really hate that grid form because if you don't clean it properly, you can really tell that the supports have been there. As for these tree supports, you kind of get more of an easier way of cleaning it. It might not be as easy to pull apart when the model's done, but cleaning it afterwards, it feels a lot easier to me. It might not for you, so completely up to you. Now, with those tree supports, I do change one setting, and it's the angle, the degree angle of its how much it'll support something at, and mine is at 40 degrees. So 40 degrees is about that much before it starts to say, oh, this incline is actually going to need some supports. So you can change that to be whatever you want. You could change it to, I wouldn't say 90 is an option because that would be impossible, but anything below 90 and it might start supporting it. You probably won't need to change it if you don't want to, but I found that changing that one little setting has made my models a lot more successful in their prints. Sometimes Cura just doesn't pick up that it needs supports, and it definitely does. With bigger models, it's actually kind of worse for Cura, I've noticed. It kind of leaves blank spots, and I would have to build supports in to get it to work properly. I've actually gone and changed models completely just because supports in Cura aren't there for it. So that's just something to take in consideration, the angle of whatever it is you're printing and whether or not it'll need supports. Sometimes it won't, just because the printer is that good at printing inclines. So I pretty much just use the stock standard things that are over on Cura. What does that mean? It means it has to be my printer that I've customized in some way or another. Now, I'm going to show you my printer and my printing setup, and don't judge me because I'm going to look like a really, really messy person, but here it is. Are you ready? Here it is. Okay, here it is. So, this is my printing station, and I will show you it in all its glory. That's a tub of white paint there. That's a glue stick over here, and a measuring tape for when I'm playing games. And this is all the offcuts recently from some projects. Now, obviously I need to chuck that away, but you can see here, what the hell is going on here? I've got an anvil, a mic stand, and that's the roll up there, and there's extra, printing filament. So what's going on up here is the printing line comes down here and goes down into the actual feeder. Now the feeder, I noticed, if you don't do this, you end up cutting away at the top up here. and the plastic will just like wear it out. I'm not sure why this isn't made out of metal. I know you can get metal parts for it, but I think it should be made out of metal to begin with. I know there's some people who have made parts for the printer to have like a little arm that extends out here. I've printed one up and I hate it. I think it needs to be all the way out here just so it works a lot better. When it is here, it tends to just like fall off once it gets too high. And you can see here my printer has recently printed quite high. Now, I've got another printer over here that's doing the exact same thing. I've just got boxes with an anvil and a PVC pipe, exact same situation that's happening. This is my friend's printer that I've borrowed, fortunately, just to get some prints going a lot faster so I can print two things at once. Now, the other thing you probably noticed is how dirty my bed is, and it is really grotty. It looks horrible. It's actually really messy, and there's still some printing filament left behind there. I've got the printing line, I always peel that off. Now, it might look like a mess, but I've done the cleaning it multiple times, and I find that it doesn't really help to have a really clean bed unless you have a really adhesive bed. And that could just come by, you know, having some other parts that you bring in, or you could just use some glue. Now, I don't know where I got this hint from to use glue to wipe all over the bed, but I use it and it helps a lot. This is the one that I used recently that is completely run out. It is amazing stuff. I don't know where the hell I got it. I got to get more of it. The glue does really depend like which type you use. You don't want something that's too liquidy or soft because it won't work properly. Like I said, I don't know where I got this one, but it was really, really, really good. And you pretty much just layer it like so, just going all over the top of it. And in areas that the printer will actually go. And once it heats up, it'll pretty much just be an adhesive little bed. Now, the first layer is probably the most important part of the print because it needs to be flat and it needs to get down, otherwise it'll screw up. Now, I've noticed with the Ender 3 beds, they have an issue where they can get air bubbles, and this might be my problem alone, but I had air bubbles building up randomly, just in random spots. And the way I found out where they were was take that off the bed and run my finger over, and you'll just hear random little pops and clicks. And that was basically an air bubble being pushed into a certain section. So what I did was look for those, and this is really unprofessional. I looked for those bits and I stabbed into the bed to relieve that air hole, so air could actually get out of there and escape. And those air bubbles have not been an issue since I've removed them. Now, the other printer over there does have that problem again. So the air bubbles are popping up, and I'm pretty sure I know why this is happening. It's pretty much once the print is done and you try to remove the print on top of there, it kind of forces itself, it makes a little pocket. I don't know where the hell the air comes from, but it forces the bed up like that while the bottom is flat. So it creates a little air pocket of unknown origin, but it's there. It definitely happens. So whether you want to stab holes into your bed, you could just use a glass bed. I've tried it, but it's really scary. I'm afraid of breaking it. Yeah. So yeah, there's a really, really messy bed, but it's got adhesion. Now, the other thing that's really important for your bed is to actually remove it when you're taking something off. So if you've printed something, don't remove it while it's on the bed, because the leveling is going to be completely pointless. You're going to have to level it every single time you print. And if you remove it, you can kind of bend the board just a tiny bit, and depending on how big it is, it'll help because it'll separate, and then you can get under it and then rip it off. Now, I know there's different beds for different scenarios, but everything I'm using is completely stock, and I wanted to emphasize that fact and how I go around using my stock stuff. Now, this is it is really messy and disgusting. You will have to clean it every now and then, And what I do with that is just use a bit of methylated spirits and I wipe the whole thing clean. And once it's dried, I use the glue stick again. That's just so it doesn't build up in certain areas. You can end up with lumpy bumps, and that's what those air bubbles are as well. So if you've got lumpy bumps, when you're printing it around, it's never going to be level because you're going to have random spots that are higher than others. Now, I don't think anyone's ever mentioned this before because I've just seen no issues with air bubbles in their beds, but it's a thing. It's just a thing. Now, this bed will eventually die, I know, and I'm going to have to get a new one, but for now, I'm really happy with how I've made out with this. I've actually just noticed that you can see the air bubbles on the other side. So if I push in one of those spots, you should be able to see the air bubble kind of like leak. So here we go. Whoop. Now normally that would have nowhere to go, but because I've poked holes, it can escape. It might one day peel away and be completely useless and I'll have to get a new bed, but those air bubbles aren't going to be an issue, and especially if a printer is like going over here, you can see my finger just going over the top of it. The printer is actually not going to have an issue because it's going to push the air out of the holes. Yeah, it's a bit of a, you know, sacrificial way to work with your stock stuff, but you know, if it doesn't cost anything, why not? And I have experimented with this. I haven't had an issue, and I've printed a lot of stuff. I wouldn't say go poking holes without any air bubbles. If your bed just works without having air bubbles in it, then that's great. But mine did, and it needs holes, so you know, it's a bit of a workaround. Now, finally, the very last thing, and this goes along with the air bubbles and the glue, keep the bed level. Make sure the bed is completely level. I won't show you how to do it in this video. Just Google it. It's really easy. Pretty much just involves a piece of paper and going around and making sure that piece of paper is a little bit taut, but not too much, around the entire thing. I've had a lot of people say they just can't print because whatever reason, and you look at the print and you're just like, the bed's not level. Like immediately you'd know when a bed isn't level. When it comes to removing the bed, you just unclip it and take it out and make sure you don't bump it too much. A tiny little bump and the bed is you're gonna have to re-level it. Like me messing around today, I know I'm gonna have to re-level this bed because of this little tutorial that I'm showing, or this little talk. So that's pretty much it. I don't have anything else special to talk about. There's one thing that's important. This little part right here, which is the belt that feeds like this to go left and right. What you should do is make sure it's all the way out. It's a little bit tight, but not too tight. My friend tightened his way too much and it was clicking and it didn't have that space to move. And I originally printed stuff with it too loose and it just didn't print stuff nicely. So if you're not getting that perfect circle when you're printing stuff and it's a little bit of an oval or like a bit of a flat edge or there's a click anywhere in it, definitely look at this part right here. It's probably too loose or too tight. So that's definitely the only things I know about this printer, and it works perfectly fine. Hopefully this has been a help to some of you guys. That is seriously all I do. When it comes to printing big things, it just comes down to the design of it, and because I'm designing it myself, I make sure that it's going to be easy to print for the printer. I do my best, and hopefully it helps you guys so you don't have to worry too much about how it's printed. Really simple stuff. Definitely stick with the supports when you need them. Use a glue, make sure you've got the flat bed, and I've got nothing more to say because everything's stock. Everything is stock. Even Cura's settings are basically stock. So that's it for today's video. Sorry if I ranted on for a bit too long, but I wanted to make sure that I said everything and clarified everything as good as I could. If there's any other questions about the printing process that I have, let me know. I'll try my best to answer them. Like I said, everything's stock. There's literally no extras, nothing fancy going on. The filament I use is the cheapest filament I can find on the internet. Everything is stock, everything's, you know, as basic as it gets. There are other tutorials out there that are much more informative, especially if you want to be adding parts to your printers. I like to keep things stock and not have to change things around. So yeah, hopefully this has been a help for someone out there, and let me know in the comments, like I said. Anyway, I'm ranting on too much. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay awesome, guys. See ya. God.